All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into Sun Tzu's Art of War,
Okay.
using, as our source, the Red Frost Motivation audiobook excerpt.
Sounds good.
So you might be thinking, what does this have to do with me? I'm not planning a military campaign or something like that, but hold on.
Right.
Whether you're prepping for like a really tough negotiation, trying to get your whole team on the same page, or just upping your strategic thinking game,
Mm.
Sun Tzu has something for you. We're talking about timeless wisdom that goes way beyond the battlefield.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how these ancient principles, they're over 2,000 years old,
Mm.
but, they still resonate with modern-day challenges.
Yeah,
Speaks to the enduring power of understanding human nature and strategy.
absolutely.
Sun Tzu was really a master of dissecting those core dynamics of conflict and competition.
Yeah, and the best part is we're getting like a condensed version, like the greatest hits.
Oh, cool.
But trust me, this taste is going to leave you craving the full experience.
Okay.
So, okay, let's dive into this first part.
Right, which Sun Tzu calls laying plans.
Okay.
And he lays out these 5 constant factors, he calls them.
Okay.
Moral law, heaven-earth commander, and method and discipline.
All right.
It almost sounds like a recipe for a mystical potion or something.
It's not magic, but it is pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Like take moral law, for instance. Sun Tzu's talking about shared values and trust between leaders and their teams.
Okay.
He knew that if everybody's on the same page, driven by a common purpose, you've already won half the battle. This isn't some ancient military mumbo-jumbo. Think about your own workplace. Have you ever been part of a project where everyone was kind of pulling in different directions?
Oh, yeah.
It's chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Like herding cats.
Exactly.
And speaking of environments, he talks about heaven and earth.
Right.
Now, I don't know if he was into astrology or anything like that.
Right.
But he was definitely onto something here.
Right. He wasn't predicting your future based on your star sign or anything like that.
Right. Heaven, for Sun Tzu, was all about timing. The seasons, the external factors you can't control, but you have to anticipate.
Okay.
Earth is more about the terrain, the resources you have available, the limitations you face.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding that playing field and, where those advantages and disadvantages lie.
Okay.
So if we bring this to the present day, let's say you're launching a new product.
Okay.
Heaven might be the economic climate, the latest trends, competitor moves, things that are outside of your control.
Yeah.
Earth would be like your team's skills, your budget, your existing network. Sun Tzu would say, know these factors inside and out.
So basically, do your homework,
Yes.
assess the landscape, and time your moves strategically.
Exactly.
Sounds like good advice whether you're launching a product or planning your next career move.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't stop there. Then he goes to commander, and he's not just talking about rank or authority here.
What's interesting is Sun Tzu dives into the character of the leader. He lists, wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness
Yeah.
as essential qualities.
Okay.
He understood that leadership is more than just giving orders. It's about inspiring, motivating, and guiding your team effectively. And again, this is relevant to you no matter what position you hold.
Mm.
Think about the best boss you've ever had. Chances are they embodied some of those qualities.
Yeah. Okay, so we got the right team, we understand the environment, and we got a strong leader at the helm. What's the missing ingredient in this recipe for success, according to Sun Tzu?
Method and discipline. And this is where things get really practical.
Okay.
Sun Tzu knew that even the most brilliant strategy falls apart without organization, clear processes, and efficient resource management. Imagine trying to build a house without blueprints or a budget.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be a disaster.
Yeah, and I bet it would be way over budget, too.
Exactly.
Now, to hammer home this point about preparation, Sun Tzu gives us 7 questions to predict victory or defeat. He's not messing around. He asks, which leader is more aligned with a shared purpose? Who has the greater skill and adaptability? Who leverages resources and timing more effectively? These aren't just questions for generals, right?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
These are questions that you can ask yourself in any situation where you're trying to achieve a goal.
Okay.
Whether it's, leading a team, closing a deal, or even just organizing your day.
Mm.
These questions force you to think strategically and honestly assess your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And here's a key takeaway. Sun Tzu emphasizes that a victorious leader makes many calculations before taking action.
Okay.
He compares this to those who rush into battle without thinking things through.
Mm-hmm.
He calls that stupid haste. He doesn't mince words.
So lesson 1 from Sun Tzu, Don't be a stupid haste kind of person.
Right.
Think things through, plan ahead, consider all the angles.
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really juicy, because then he drops this bomb. All warfare is based on deception. Wait, what?
Right. It might seem counterintuitive, but Sun Tzu understood that being strategic sometimes means being a little bit sneaky.
Okay.
He's not advocating for dishonesty, but rather the ability to conceal your intentions, mislead your opponent, and strike when they least expect it.
It's like playing poker, right?
Exactly.
They don't want to show your hand too early.
Right.
But he balances this with a heavy emphasis on calculation and preparation.
Yes.
So he's basically saying, be smart, be strategic, but also be adaptable, and don't be afraid to throw a curveball now and then. And that brings us to the next part of our deep dive, where things get real about the cost of conflict.
Exactly. Sun Tzu wasn't just a strategist. He was also a pragmatist.
Okay.
He understood that war, and by extension, any kind of conflict, has real-world consequences.
Yeah. So we left off talking about how Sun Tzu, despite being, this military mastermind, was also keenly aware of the economic realities of war.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away from the financial burden at all.
Not at all. He throws out this crazy detail: 1,000 ounces of silver a day, just to keep an army of 100,000 men going.
Wow.
That's a lot of silver.
Yeah, that's a lot of silver even for an emperor.
Right. So he knew that prolonged conflicts, they could just drain resources and morale, which could lead to defeat, even if you're winning the battles.
He emphasizes speed and decisive action. The longer the conflict drags on, the more strain it puts on everyone involved.
Yeah.
And this is where this concept of foraging on the enemy comes into play.
Okay, at first glance, this sounds pretty brutal, like literally taking food from your enemy. But I have a feeling there's a little more to it than that.
Absolutely. While foraging for supplies was a practical necessity back then, Sun Tzu was also advocating for resourcefulness.
Okay.
He's saying, look for opportunities to leverage your opponent's weaknesses to your advantage.
Okay.
This could mean anything from, capitalizing on a competitor's mistake or using your rival's marketing campaign to boost your own visibility.
So it's about being adaptable, opportunistic, and maybe even a little bit cunning. He's saying, don't just play defense. Look for ways to turn the tables and use your opponent's moves to fuel your own success.
Precisely. And this leads us to one of Sun Tzu's most famous and perhaps most counterintuitive concepts. Attack by stratagem.
Okay.
The art of subduing the enemy without actually fighting.
This no fighting thing keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Like in chapter 3, he says, the supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting.
But isn't that the whole point of war?
Yeah, you would think.
To fight.
It might seem paradoxical, but Sun Tzu believed that the highest form of victory is achieved through strategic brilliance, not brute force. Think about it this way. What's more impressive? Winning a chess match in a few moves, or having to slug it out for hours until your opponent is exhausted?
I see your point, yeah. It's about outsmarting your opponent, not just overpowering them. Exactly. And this applies to so many situations beyond the battlefield. Imagine a company that gains market share, not through aggressive advertising, but by developing a truly innovative product that everyone wants.
Right.
That's Sun Tzu in action.
Or a negotiator who manages to get everyone to agree on a solution that benefits all parties involved.
Right.
They've essentially won without having to resort to threats or ultimatums.
Exactly. It's about achieving your objectives through persuasion, influence, and strategic maneuvering, not brute force. And this brings us to chapter 4, Tactical Dispositions, where Sun Tzu really dives into the importance of positioning, both literally and figuratively.
He's not just talking about where you set up camp on the battlefield, right?
No, he's talking about a much broader concept. Sun Tzu emphasizes the need to adapt your approach based on your current strength and the situation at hand. He says, security against defeat implies defensive tactics. Ability to defeat the enemy means taking the offensive.
Okay.
It's about knowing when to hold back and when to strike.
He uses this incredible imagery. The general who is skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth. He who is skilled in attack flashes forth from the topmost heights of heaven.
I love that.
It's almost poetic.
It's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
Really captures the essence of strategic flexibility. Sometimes you need to lie low, conserve your energy, and assess the situation. Other times, you need to be bold, seize the initiative, and strike decisively.
So it's about knowing when to be the tortoise and when to be the hare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Sun Tzu warns against being predictable.
Okay.
He says that seeing victory only when it's obvious to everyone, That's not the mark of true excellence.
Oh, okay.
He champions the idea of achieving victory, like with ease,
Wow.
through strategic brilliance rather than brute force.
So don't just win effortlessly. Like, it was never even a challenge. This guy sets a high bar,
Yeah.
but he's also giving us a roadmap to achieve that level of mastery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Sun Tzu doesn't shy away from discussing the raw power needed to achieve victory either.
Right.
Like in Chapter 5, Energy, he gets into the importance of focused effort and decisive action.
Exactly.
He uses this incredible metaphor. The impact of your army should be like a grindstone dashed against an egg.
Oh, wow.
That's a powerful image. He's talking about concentrating your forces, targeting your opponent's weaknesses, and striking with overwhelming force.
Exactly. It's about understanding leverage, using your strengths to exploit your opponent's vulnerabilities.
Okay.
This principle applies far beyond the battlefield. Think about a successful business deal. It's often the result of identifying the other side's needs and presenting a solution that meets those needs while also advancing your own goals.
So it's like a strategic judo move,
Right.
using your opponent's momentum against them.
Exactly.
But Sun Tzu also stresses the importance of adaptability, constantly evolving our tactics to stay ahead of the game.
Absolutely. In Chapter 6, Weak Points and Strong, he emphasizes the importance of knowing yourself and your opponent, understanding their strengths and weaknesses and adapting your strategies accordingly. He says, whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field and has to hasten to battle will arrive exhausted. It's all about choosing the time and place of confrontation to your advantage.
He's a master of positioning, both physically and psychologically. He wants you to be in the driver's seat, dictating the terms of engagement.
Yeah, and he uses that vivid imagery again, hiding in the most secret recesses of the earth and attacking from the topmost heights of heaven, but this time to emphasize knowing when to conceal and when to reveal your strength.
Okay.
It's about being unpredictable, keeping your opponent off balance.
Sun Tzu's all about deception, misdirection, and making your opponent play your game. He even says, all men can see the tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved.
Sneaky.
So sneaky.
To highlight the importance of adaptability, he compares military tactics to water, stating, water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing.
So like water, we've got to flow around obstacles, find the path of least resistance, and ultimately wear down our opponent with persistent, adaptable action.
Exactly. And in Chapter 7, Maneuvering, Sun Tzu takes adaptability to a whole new level. This is where things get really tricky.
He says tactical maneuvering is nothing more difficult. He's not sugarcoating it. What makes it so challenging?
It's about turning the tables, transforming seemingly negative situations into opportunities for victory. It's about deception, misdirection, and creating advantageous situations, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Like judo, right?
Yes.
Using your opponent's momentum against them.
Exactly.
And Sun Tzu warns against rushing into action, saying, if you set a fully equipped army in march in order to snatch an advantage, the chances are that you will be too late.
He's all about careful planning and timing.
Okay.
Choosing your moments strategically. Strike when you have the greatest advantage. Retreat when necessary to preserve your strength.
He even gives these specific examples like marching 30 miles without stopping and how that can be disastrous.
Right.
It's about avoiding reckless haste and emphasizing strategic patience.
And alongside strategic patience, he stresses clear communication.
Okay.
He says, on the field of battle, the spoken word does not carry far enough, hence the institution of gongs and drums.
Mm-hmm.
It's a metaphor for ensuring everyone is on the same page, especially in large, complex operations.
So clear communication, strategic timing, adaptability, turning misfortune into gain. It's all starting to come together.
And it leads to Chapter 8, Variation in Tactics, where Sun Tzu applies these principles to specific battlefield situations. But remember, he's not just talking about literal battlefields.
Right.
He's giving us a framework for strategic thinking in any context.
So how does he break down these variations in tactics? What does he want us to be paying attention to?
Okay, so we're back, and we've been talking about how Sun Tzu emphasizes adaptability and choosing your battles wisely. But how does he suggest we actually navigate those specific situations, those variations in tactics that he talks about?
Well, he lays out some principles that might seem obvious at first, but when you dig deeper, they reveal a surprising depth.
Okay.
Like, for example, he advises, when in difficult country, do not encamp. In country where high roads intersect, join hands with your allies. It seems simple, right?
Right.
Don't put yourself in a bad spot and team up when it's beneficial.
Yeah, it sounds like common sense, but I bet there are situations where we get so caught up in our own plans that we miss those obvious red flags.
Exactly. Sun Tzu is reminding us to step back, assess the situation objectively, and not be afraid to change course if the terrain isn't favorable.
And this applies to so many things, from choosing, business partners to deciding which projects to take on. Don't be afraid to walk away from a deal that just doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of walking away, Sun Tzu even goes as far to say, there are roads which must not be followed, armies which must not be attacked, towns which must not be besieged, positions which must not be contested, commands of the sovereign which must not be obeyed. Whoa, that's pretty bold. He's basically saying, think for yourself.
He's highlighting the importance of independent judgment and strategic flexibility.
Okay.
Blindly following orders or sticking to a plan that's no longer working, that's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
A true leader needs to be able to assess the situation and make those tough calls, even if it means going against the grain.
So be adaptable, know your terrain, and don't be afraid to think outside the box, even if it means breaking the rules sometimes. Now, Sun Tzu also gets into some pretty specific scenarios, outlining what he calls the 9 situations in Chapter 11.
These are like battlefield archetypes: dispersive ground, facile ground, contentious ground, open ground, and so on.
Okay.
Each presents unique challenges and opportunities,
Yeah.
and Sun Tzu gives specific guidance on how to approach each one.
He gives these really specific strategies for each situation. It's almost like he's created a battlefield playbook for every possible scenario.
He was a master at analyzing the nuances of conflict and tailoring his approach to the specific circumstances. And here's the key takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
There is no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
You have to be able to read the situation, understand the dynamics at play, and choose the right strategy for that particular moment.
It's like having a toolbox full of different tools. You wouldn't use a hammer to tighten a screw.
Right, yeah.
You need the right tool for the job.
And Sun Tzu reminds us that psychology plays a huge role in these situations too. He says, begin by seizing something which your opponent holds dear. Then he will be amenable to your will.
He's talking about exploiting your opponent's weaknesses, both physical and psychological. It's about understanding their motivations, their fears, their vulnerabilities.
He then provides a series of tactical principles,
Okay.
emphasizing speed, deception, and exploiting unguarded spots. But alongside those aggressive tactics, he also advises leaders to carefully study the well-being of your men and do not overtax them.
It's another reminder that leadership is about more than just giving orders.
Absolutely.
It's about taking care of your people, understanding their limits, and ensuring their well-being. Sun Tzu was a brilliant strategist, but he was also a pragmatist who understood that human cost of conflict.
Right. And he introduces a concept that ties together a lot of what we've been discussing, the idea of making your army like unto rolling logs or stones.
Okay, that's a cool visual. It sounds unstoppable. What does he mean by that?
He's talking about the power of momentum and decisive action, but also the importance of control and discipline.
Okay.
A force that's out of control, no matter how powerful, is ultimately destructive.
Right.
It's like a river that overflows its banks.
Yeah.
It might seem powerful, but it's causing more harm than good.
So be like water, but also be like a rolling stone, but make sure you're steering that stone in the right direction.
Exactly. And Sun Tzu brings this all together in Chapter 12, The Attack by Fire,
Okay.
where he talks about utilizing every tool at your disposal, including the elements, to achieve your objective.
Okay, I was wondering when we were going to get to the fire part. This is where things get a little, shall we say, heated.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling it's not as straightforward as just like setting things on fire.
You're right. Sun Tzu outlines 5 ways to use fire strategically: burning soldiers in their camp, burning stores, burning baggage trains, burning arsenals and magazines, and using dropping fire against the enemy.
Okay.
But he's very clear that this isn't about mindless destruction. It's about calculated disruption.
So it's more about using fire to disrupt the enemy's logistics, their morale, their resources, not exactly setting the whole world on fire then.
Precisely. He emphasizes timing, weather conditions, even the direction of the wind to maximize the impact of the fire attack while minimizing collateral damage.
It sounds like Sun Tzu was centuries ahead of his time with this whole know your environment thing.
Right.
Now, he also talks about being prepared for the enemy's response to a fire attack, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about starting a fire and hoping for the best.
He outlines 5 possible developments to consider. The enemy responding with an attack, remaining quiet, the fire reaching its peak, the possibility of attacking from outside the camp, and the direction of the wind. He's thinking several steps ahead,
Okay.
anticipating the enemy's reactions and planning accordingly.
He's playing 3D chess while everyone else is stuck in checkers.
Exactly.
And I love how he even advises attacking from the windward side of the fire, not the leeward side. It's like he's saying, don't get burned by your own strategy.
Right. And beyond just the tactical aspects of using fire, Sun Tzu emphasizes a broader principle, the importance of initiative and calculated risk-taking. He criticizes those who try to win battles without cultivating the spirit of enterprise, which results in wasted time and stagnation.
So it's not just about fire, it's about having the guts to take calculated risks and seize opportunities when they arise.
He's advocating for a proactive approach, urging leaders to move not unless you see an advantage and fight not unless the position is critical. It's about choosing your battles wisely, but also being willing to act decisively when the time is right.
Fortune favors the bold, as they say. But Sun Tzu's version is more like, fortune favors the strategically bold and well-prepared.
Exactly. Calculated risk-taking is essential for success, but it has to be tempered with wisdom, preparation, and a deep understanding of the situation.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from laying plans and choosing our battles to understanding the terrain and utilizing every tool at our disposal. But there's one more piece of the puzzle that we haven't talked about yet, and it's perhaps the most intriguing and controversial aspect of warfare: espionage.
Yes, Chapter 13, the use of spies. This is where Sun Tzu really reveals his understanding of the crucial role that intelligence plays in achieving victory.
Oh, spies. Now we're talking. This sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. What kind of insights does Sun Tzu offer on the art of espionage?
Well, he recognizes that knowledge is power,
Okay.
especially when you're dealing with an enemy that's trying to outmaneuver you.
Right.
He states that what enables the wise sovereign and the good general to strike and conquer and achieve things beyond the reach of ordinary men is foreknowledge.
Makes sense. If you know what your opponent's going to do before they do it, you're already one step ahead. But how do you get that kind of foreknowledge?
He argues that it can't be obtained from spirits, from experience, or even calculations. It can only come from other men, specifically spies.
So ditch the crystal ball and go talk to some people who know what's going on.
Exactly. And Sun Tzu then breaks down 5 different types of spies: local spies, inward spies, converted spies, doomed spies, and surviving spies.
Okay, so there are different kinds of spies. Tell me more about these different types.
So local spies are recruited from the enemy's territory,
Okay.
providing insights into the terrain, local sentiment, enemy activity. Think of them as your on-the-ground intel gatherers. Inward spies are officials within the enemy's ranks who've been turned to your side,
Wow.
offering access to confidential information and potential sabotage.
So it's like having moles inside the enemy's organizations.
Pretty
That's
much.
high-level stuff.
Then you have converted spies, enemy spies who have been captured and then persuaded to work for you, providing information about the enemy's intelligence network, potentially feeding disinformation back to their former masters.
It's like turning your enemy's weapons against them. And what about these doomed spies? That sounds pretty intense.
Doomed spies are sent on missions with false information, knowing they'll likely be captured.
Wow.
Their purpose is to mislead the enemy, cause them to make strategic errors based on fabricated intelligence. It's a high-stakes game of deception.
Okay. And the final type, surviving spies. What's their role?
They're like your classic undercover agents sent to gather information and return with their findings. They're the eyes and ears of the army, providing first-hand accounts of the enemy's strength, movements, intentions.
So it sounds like Sun Tzu had a whole spy network mapped out with different types of agents playing different roles. It's pretty impressive.
He was a master of intelligence gathering,
Yeah.
recognizing its crucial importance in warfare. And he doesn't just talk about the types of spies. He also delves into the ethics and practicalities of managing them.
What kind of advice does he give on that front? Sounds like a pretty delicate operation.
Well, he emphasizes discretion, rewarding spies generously, and maintaining absolute secrecy. He even says, if a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death, together with the man to whom the secret was told.
Yikes. I guess in the world of espionage, loose lips really can sink ships or entire armies.
He also highlights the importance of intuition and character in managing spies, saying they cannot be properly managed without benevolence and straightforwardness.
Hmm.
Managing spies effectively requires a unique blend of cunning, empathy, and discernment.
So you've got to be smart, strategic, and able to read people well.
Exactly.
It's not just about gathering information, but knowing which information is reliable and how to use it effectively.
And Sun Tzu sums up the importance of spies by saying, spies are a most important element in war, because on them depends an army's ability to move.
Hmm.
Without accurate, timely intelligence, an army is essentially blind, stumbling around in the dark, vulnerable to the enemy's attacks.
It's a reminder that victory is often achieved not just through brute force, but through cunning, strategy, and the ability to gather and utilize information effectively.
And with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into Sun Tzu's Art of War. We covered a lot of ground, from the importance of planning and deception to the strategic use of fire and espionage.
It's amazing how these ancient principles are still so relevant today. Sun Tzu's insights into human nature, strategy, and leadership are just as powerful in the 21st century as they were centuries ago.
Whether you're leading a team, negotiating a deal, or just trying to navigate the complexities of everyday life, Sun Tzu's wisdom can offer some really valuable guidance.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey through the mind of a military genius. I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on strategy, leadership, and the art of achieving success, even when faced with some pretty challenging circumstances.
Remember, Sun Tzu's ultimate goal is to subdue the enemy without fighting. To achieve that, we need to embrace adaptability, strategic thinking, and a deep understanding of ourselves and our opponents.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Sun Tzu's Art of War. Until next time, stay strategic, stay adaptable, and may your victories be swift and decisive.